So many people have wanted him on the Fearless and Devotion podcast for so long, we had to oblige. Before the arrival of Ryan and Rob, Wrexham FC was epitomised by another two words, Brian and Flynn. He was so much more than a manager in a long association with Wrexham that began as a player and went on into legend. Under him, then Rob enjoyed the best spell any of us can remember, famed cup runs and of course that Arsenal win. He also helped him to bring in some absolute icons, from Marriott to Fergie, Trundle to Morel, and of course, Benno and Connolly. Now, bit of disclaimer in this. This is such a long period. None of us, not me, not Liam, not Brian, are going to get absolutely everything right here, but we're going to make it our best to try. Welcome to the pod, the one and only Brian Flynn. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Andy. Everything's good. Obviously, it's been a fantastic year in so many ways, and glad to see the start of a very, very exciting new journey ahead.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we're all amazed how good we were last season. I think we'll sort of get on. We'll try and do a comparison of your team and this team. It's going to be a bit hard because I know you played at a much higher level, but we like to make comparisons, and it helps like the newer sort of fans understand where it's all coming from, talking to a legend like you. So firstly, can we just sort of go through as a player? I mean, I'll be honest, I only saw a few games at the back end of your career, and I don't think Liam probably saw you at all play. How good were you at football?
That's going to take the short. There's two answers to that: the short and long. Obviously, the short. I'll take the short, and one word: fantastic. and as I'm getting older, I'm like a good bottle of wine. I'm getting better by the year.
So you're actually in your mind. You're improving as a player.
Absolutely, yeah, and sometimes in other people's minds as well, when they look back and there's certain things happen that obviously are influential in that, in terms of mainly my Welsh career, which is obviously more of a highlight. In terms of the playing side, but how good a footballer was I? I probably would be in a current bracket, probably about 150 grand a week.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Could still be playing for Burnley in the Premier League.
I don't think Burnley will pay that money now, but if you look at the top six, I mean, I was with Leeds and we finished. In my first 4 years, we finished fourth, third, and fourth, and Jimmy Armfield got the sack because it wasn't good enough.
Right.
So that's what the sort of the standard Leeds were at that time.
Wow. I mean, how does a Port Talbot boy end up at Burnley? Because that's where you started, wasn't it?
Correct. Yes, I actually signed for Cardiff as an associate schoolboy. What that means was you signed, it was called the Old Blue form. You signed the form when you're 14, only when you're 14. You can't do anything else. And I went to Cardiff and well over a year, went on a Tuesday night to train after school, all on my own, and train once a week. And then I found out at the end of that season, they'd not retained me. They'd released me, but they didn't tell me that. Somebody else found out that I'd been released, that they wanted me to go to a development squad, which I understand now. I can understand it, where if somebody's not quite good enough at 14, look, I was never going to be 6 foot, so there's no argument over that. So but they put my form in a drawer and just forgot it, and then. Once I found out, then the first people who were knocking on my door was Burnley. They came knocking on the door and said, "We'd like you to go up to Burnley." And as soon as I came up, it was so interesting in terms. It was like a home from home for me, apart from the beach.
Port Talbot and Burnley, quite industrial centres, quite similar size.
Aberafon Beach. No, look, Andy, from Aberafon Beach, I missed the beach. I grew up on the beach. Obviously, as a kid, Burnley's an industrial cotton mill, old cotton mills everywhere. But it just felt home from home. And I did go on trials to Arsenal, to Leeds, to Chelsea, and look at that. But London wasn't for me, so it was Burnley without a doubt.
You're famous for, and you sort of alluded to it there, you're famous for having a very diminutive frame. How did you cope with being so small in that sort of rough and tumble league? Wasn't a lot of protection from referees. And did you score many headers?
Oh, what a classic opening question. Did I score many headers? Yes, I'll come to that in a second, Andy. In terms of, I thankfully, throughout my career, I've never had a serious injury. I put that down to, in primary school, we played rugby from 6-year-old till I left to the comprehensive. So probably for 4 or 5 years, I played rugby. So I knew how to take a tackle, but a physical tackle, not below the leg tackle. So I was able to read situations and know if I'm going to get hurt or I'm going to be in trouble in terms of... but size didn't matter, you know what I mean? I could tackle as hard as anybody else in terms of opposing players.
Yeah.
But one thing when I came to Burnley, I was thinking, nobody ever mentioned my size or if I have to compensate for the lack of inches. I was never going to win a lot of headers in midfield. You don't need to win a lot of headers in midfield, basically. The heading duels are always inside the penalty boxes. But on the point that you said, the most famous headed goal in Welsh history, I'm one of the only 2 players to score against Brazil, and the only one to score with a head. So I scored with a header, far post. I glamorized the story a little bit by saying I rose above Dr. Socrates at the far post. Who's Dr. Socrates, if you know, is about 6'4". He did play that day. He was captain. Yeah. But I glamorized the story. I ghosted in at the far post and managed to score with a diving header.
Just want to ask Liam the trivia question. Liam, who was the other player? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
Oh, no. We'll be Googling it now. Liam will be Googling it.
I'll give you a clue. It was another past Wrexham manager.
Yeah, correct, Andy.
Ooh.
That's a big clue, that is.
Come on. I tell you what, it's not Gary Mills.
For Wales.
Is it Arvon?
Yeah, for Wales. Come on.
Is it
right? Is it countdown? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Dean Saunders. Come on, mate.
Oh, Dean Saunders. Yeah.
Don't tell me you've glossed over the Dean Saunders period. Right. Anyway, Brian, there was so much to talk about in your playing career, but we're here to talk about Wrexham, and we don't want to take up your time by talking about Leeds and all the fantastic memories you had here. So let's sort of skip forward to more towards the end of your playing career. Were you always interested in coaching? Was that something you were sort of thinking about as you were sort of getting over the age of 30?
Yes, it was. I took my B license, which was done on a regional basis in the Northwest, which was over basically, it lasted 6 weeks and it was every Sunday or for a Sunday, all day Sunday. This was after playing on a Saturday as well. And I was committed that we played on a Saturday, went to it was called the preliminary B license then, which I passed. And then automatically I went for the A license in the following summer, the FA A license, as it was called then, at Lilleshall, and spent a week at Lilleshall to get it, which I did. I was 28 then.
Okay, so pretty young.
Yeah, but I thought, well, yeah, football it's a fantastic career, and I I've got to admit, I was sliding down the ladder in terms of I left. The old question is, Andy, do you go back? I was at Leeds.
Yeah.
Things weren't going great at Leeds. I must admit, the team was struggling in the top division. I was a bit of a scapegoat looking back. Didn't realise at the time, but I decided to come back to Burnley. And the old adage, do you go back? Some people say never go back. I came back. It was okay for a year, and then unfortunately for Burnley, John Bond took over.
Right. Okay.
Unfortunately for Burnley, and my time at Burnley was soon over. And I went to Cardiff. I'll get down to Wrexham in a minute. So I went to Cardiff. Then the only reason I went to Cardiff was the manager at the time was Alan Durbin, who was from Port Talbot, who I knew, and he persuaded me to go to Cardiff. Didn't work out. I ended up at Doncaster. So my career was going down the leagues basically, Andy.
Yeah.
I went to Doncaster. I went to Bury, and that's where my coaching career started. Was not at Bury, but I was at Bury at the time, and one of my best friends in football, we played together at Burnley, was Billy Hamilton, the Northern Islands striker.
Oh yeah, he went on to manage them, didn't he? Yeah.
Centre forward.
Yeah.
That was Brian Hamilton.
Sorry. Okay.
Billy Hamilton went to Oxford from Burnley for big money. Unfortunately, had to retire through his knee wasn't great, so he had to retire at Oxford. And he got offered the manager's job at Limerick.
Right. Yeah.
And he refused. He wouldn't take it unless I went with him.
As a player or a coach, or both?
Both.
Right.
As a player coach. Limerick were, I suppose this is where my first taste of fighting relegation or fighting disaster. Limerick were 5 points adrift, and they brought us in the January to keep them safe. I think we had 11 games left. We kept them safe. They stayed in the top division. And at the end of the season, they sacked me.
Oh, thanks.
And that's football. It was a good lesson looking back. It was a good lesson looking back, but you never know what's around the next corner. Even though you fairly successful, you've done what was expected of you, and then and after that, I came back and
Doncaster, was it?
Back to Doncaster, yeah, with a really good young side. But in the meantime, I was approached by the PFA to do some work with the PFA. So it was what was called the Football in the Community scheme then. So I was approached to do that. And so I was doing that. I was doing that for over 18 months. During that time, Joey Jones phoned us up and said, look, Brian, Dixie wants to have a word with you. I've mentioned him that you're available. So I went on a chat with Dixie, explained the situation. I can play games, I'm fit. I'll try if I can do 2 training sessions a week, I'll do my best to do that. And Dixie was more than happy with that. We had a good year that season, playing wise in terms of getting to the playoffs, beating Scunthorpe. I think we beat Scunthorpe away 5-1, something like that. I think we in the first leg of the semi-final, I think we battered them.
Yeah.
Sure, it was 5-1. So we went into the second leg against Leyton Orient. We lost the 2-legged tie at home. Basically, we didn't do enough at home. We should have won the game, and classic, we didn't. Then lose down in Orient.
Yeah.
But then what happened after that was Kevin Russell got sold for big money. Mike Salmon got sold. Mike was the best goalkeeper in the division. Kevin was the highest scorer in the division. So, as teammates, I knew that the team would struggle, which culminated in Dixie leaving and the chairman asking me to take over, and that's how it all began.
Yeah, I was going to say, was it always natural that you would take over? Did you sort of think, this could be the job for me? Would you? No,
never entered my mind.
Okay.
Never entered my mind until again Joey rang me up again. I was actually in a meeting with Gordon Taylor at the PFA offices in Manchester, and what happened was that I was in a meeting and Gordon received an internal telephone call to say that a certain Dave Lovett was downstairs.
Bloody hell, honestly.
Yes, yeah. Obviously, you know Dave Lovett. Dave Lovett, Wrexham leader, the football correspondent, the head football correspondent for the Wrexham leader. And he was downstairs, and Gordon said, look, there's a Dave Lovett downstairs. Would you like to speak to him? And I said, yeah, of course. So I went downstairs, and Dave said, Dixie's left. The chairman has told me privately he wants you as manager. So the first thing I heard was from Dave Lovett, basically. Well, Joey rang me up, and Joey said, look, Dixie's left. Dixie's left, and look, why don't you ever go? And that was the first time, really, I thought. And then, obviously, the next step was Dave Lovett downstairs. So that's how it all happened.
Wow, that is proper old school journalism. That we don't do
exactly.
that anymore. Follow someone on Twitter now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an amazing story. Now, can I ask about Kevin Reeves, because you two were synonymous. You know, I don't know. Is this a bit unfair? Was it a bit of a good cop, bad cop? Were you a little bit more ruthless than Kevin? He was everyone's pal, wasn't he?
Kev was. I first met Kev when I played at Burnley, signed for Burnley. One of the good things that John Bond did was sign Kevin Reeves.
I sense a no John Bond Bond here.
Yeah, he came to Burnley, and in terms of playing wise, we hit it off, and then off the field wise, we hit it off as well. Even though he lived in Manchester, we got on really well, and then we always kept in touch. We always spoke to each other. Sometimes that doesn't happen in football. You know, that the friendship seems to disappear after a certain length of time, but mine and Kevin's didn't. Unfortunately for Kev, at Burnley, he had to retire at 28.
Yeah,
because of his hip. So he had to retire early, and then he did the same as me. Before he had his new hip, he did his coaching courses. I think we could have been on the same one in Lilleshall, I think, which was another connection. And as soon as the Wrexham position became available, it was. I know Joey would say yes.
Yeah.
I knew that he'd be part of the trio, and we were a trio. I must admit, it was a fantastic trio. And then I asked Kev if he'd be interested in coming in, and that's history. I mean, they were the perfect. There was no 1, 2, and 3. We were all basically the same, and it was so vital to me to have Joey and Kev. But Kev was, as you say, Mr. Nice Guy. Joey wasn't a bad guy.
No,
Joey,
he's not. He's not at all.
Joey wasn't a bad. He just threatened everybody, Joey, which is, you all know Joey. I'll knock your head off. I've heard a few stories recently, and I couldn't believe it was true, that he chased one of the players in the away dressing room and knocked 5 bells out of him. That's Joey.
I was going to say his bike's worse than his bike, but it sounds like his bike's pretty bad.
Yes, his bike can be at the wrong time. So it was like a perfect combination. It was a perfect fit for Wrexham. Yeah. Absolutely.
How bad was the situation when you took over there? And I know you said you'd sold some of the better players. You knew that they may struggle on the pitch, but what was it like off the pitch? I mean, I remember back there. Were you training in the car park? Was that? The
kids were training in the car park. Where were we training? We were training at the old rugby school.
Brineston.
Yeah. The old, go past not Grove Park, where they were training before. Well, recently Wrexham were training there. Is it Grove Park?
Liam, you might know better.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they were training on the 9 acre near the Groves.
Liam, that's it. 9 acre. Well, you drive straight past that. You go down towards the school, and it was next to a primary school. I think it was a piece of council land, and basically we had to scour it first for glass, and then the excrement, any dog excrement before we could start.
Wow!
And if the council vans came, we used to sort of not run like children, but we said, time up, lads, training's finished, because it was pretty tough, I must admit, in them training conditions. That's why it became, from day one, basically, it can an obsession. Colliers Park was an obsession I had, and I wouldn't rest until that happened. So that's obviously so many years in advance. But the training, I knew we'd struggle. Because we couldn't prepare the team properly for the Saturday. No goals. The goals literally were kit. Basic. It was
Jumpers
kit on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally was. The goalposts were kit.
So clearly there was, quite a lot of work to do there. But could you see the potential in some of the youngsters that were coming through even then, with the likes of Lee Jones, Gareth Owen, Wayne Phillips, Phil Hardy and Steve Watkin?
Yeah, obviously lent on Cliff Sear and Mike Buxton so heavily at that period, because I said that when we get out of this situation, all these youngsters are going to be playing next season. They're going to play 30, 40 games each, so they're going to have to be ready. And what will happen is we'll struggle. We'll struggle in terms of consistency and performances and results. But one thing's for certain: the 2 years' time, and that's the way I had to be. Look at 2 years in advance. But in 2 years' time, just they'll be perfect for a really strong promotional push. And the chairman believed me when I told him the plan. Obviously, backed me and believed me, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, that's what I was actually going to come on to, is your relationship with Price Griffiths. Was he the perfect chairman to have at that particular time?
For a first chairman, he was unbelievable. Yeah, the biggest compliment you can have. He just said, "Get on with the job. If you need me, you know where I am." Basically, that's it. I had very little contact with him day to day. Well, none day to day. I might have a chat with him on a Friday prior to the game and give him an update on what's going on. If it was an away match, what time's the coach leaving? Just general things like that. And it was like a perfect relationship.
Yeah. You were also known clearly for having a good eye for a player. So where on earth did you unearth people like Carl Connolly from? And, can you see from the first game he had at Wrexham that he'd be so good for us?
I've always thought that there's always players, when it doesn't matter where or how or whatever level they're playing, if they've got that potential and desire to improve, age is no barrier. It shouldn't be a barrier. As it proved throughout my career, I signed Mickey Thomas at 34, Alan Kennedy, Jimmy Case. I think Jimmy told a few lies. He said he was 32. I'm sure he was 38. I'm sure he was. But so age doesn't matter. It didn't. Carl was. We had a scout working in Liverpool, looking at youngsters for Mike Buxton and Cliff Sear, looking for young talent at under 16 level. Every age from under 16, and like as you're well aware, Merseyside's a hotbed for young players. So it was, but obviously the elite young players go to Liverpool and Everton, and then the next step for them is Tranmere. So we're number 4 in the list, really, in terms of geography, where we are and what we can attract. And we had a really good scout in Liverpool who rang me on a Monday morning and said, "I found a player, Brian." I said, "Well, I'll just go and get Cliff Sear for you you can have a chat with him." He said, "No, he's for you." I said, "Oh, just explain." Keith, his name was. Just explain, Keith. He said, "Well, on a Sunday morning, I'm a part-time referee, and I do the Liverpool Sunday Business Homes League, and I refereed a young player yesterday, and have a look at him, Brian. Just have a look at him. I said, where does he play? He went, anywhere. What was his name? Carl Connolly. Right, okay. Look, we've got a reserve game Wednesday. I trust you, Keith, implicitly. We've got a reserve game Wednesday. Is he good enough to go straight into a reserve team game? And he went, yes, no doubt. So I said, well, find out today if he's available for Wednesday, and then we can make arrangements for him to come across. Keith rang me back later that day. He said, thankfully, Carl can get a shift off working in a chippy, so he can play. And he worked in a chippy in Liverpool, so he could play on Wednesday. And when he came on the Wednesday, after 10 minutes, we knew that he was a player. Both me and Kev sat in the stand, and we said, we've unearthed a diamond here. For us, he was like, and not only that, the players appreciated him as well. They knew how good he was. He wasn't coming off a Parkside. He had so many little tricks under his up his sleeve. It was brilliant to watch, and it wasn't long before we signed him full time.
Yeah.
So in terms of actually finding them, yes, we give them opportunities, but it's up to them then to realise their potential.
Brian, this wouldn't happen now. This is like When Saturday Comes, the film with Sean Bean. I mean, how could a player this good slip through all those nets? I mean, I can't really understand it. Was he at Everton and Liverpool as a youth and just drifted away, or?
No, having known it at the elite level, big clubs sometimes get a bit too blasé about it. We can't sign a player from, we can't sign a player for £1 million. We are X, Y, and Z. I was at Everton, and if they were buying players at Everton for, when I was scouting, for less than 2 million, they weren't regarded as any good. But there's some brilliant free transfer players. So it's Carl was just a natural late developer. I mean, I talk about, I'd seen a lot of it in because when I was with Wales for 8 years. I managed the under-17s, 90s, and 21s. So I knew every Welsh player in the country, in the UK, well, in Europe. There was a couple in Europe as well who could play for Wales. And the biggest surprise I've ever had, he's turned out to be one of the most consistent defenders in the Premier League have seen over the last 10 years. And that's Ben Davies at Tottenham. So we had him when he was 17 at Swansea. He was in the under-17 squad. And then because he was left back, because he had good height, he was average paced. He wasn't, but at that time, obviously being a left back with Gareth Bale about was going to be difficult at that time. And Joe Jacobson, who went on to have a really good career at Wycombe. They were the left backs around at the time, so I knew he might struggle. And Alan Curtis, who was working with me for Wales then, I said to Alan, Ben Davies, great lad, I said, League of Wales, top level. How wrong could I be? So you get them right, but sometimes you can get them wrong. I told Alan privately, I think the best he's going to do is League of Wales, down at Haverfordwest or somewhere like that, or Goitra. And then he gets a £10 million move to Tottenham. And as I say, probably the most consistent defender there has been in the Premier League.
Yeah, what a career he's had. I think probably another one of your strengths at Wrexham was your ability to build links with other managers and clubs. I'm thinking specifically of Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United. How did that come about, and did it ultimately lead to you signing Darren?
Oh, there's how many stories do you want on this one?
All of them.
All of them. First of all, in terms of Sir Alex, as he wasn't then, because I live in Burnley, and because I knew that the development of young players at Wrexham was going to be the key to any success we're going to have. So I used to try, on a Saturday morning, we were playing at home on Saturday morning at Wrexham. Players are due to arrive by 1:30, 1:45. I would set off from my house at 9:30, go to the Cliff training ground, which was Manchester United's training ground, and watch their under-18s play on a Saturday morning. So I'd been there a couple of times, and upstairs in the room upstairs, overlooking the pitch at the Cliff, I was somebody came down and said, Alex would like to have a word with you upstairs. So I said, oh yeah, okay. So I went upstairs, and he said, I've noticed you've been here 4 or 5 times now recently. I said, yeah. I said, not all of them are going to play in your first team, but there's a chance that we might be able to, if you give me first chance of, if you let me know who's available and when they're available. And he said, most certainly, Brian, I will definitely do that. And so that's basically where it stemmed from, is me going to watch the under-18s, and then following season asking for loan players. Obviously, the loan players would go back. The first loan player would be Brian Carey. First loan player we had from Manchester United was Brian Carey. Obviously, the players, they haven't said to me, but obviously the players have gone back to Alex and said, great atmosphere, good club, we like it, I like the way they play in. So they've gone back with good vibes, basically, to Alex, that they've been looked after properly. And they're playing games as well. And they're actually playing. So, which culminated in, anytime I'd request a player on loan, then Alex was more than helpful financially as well. You know, financially, the United, because obviously they were earning a lot more than our players were earning. So at that time, you could do deals with, in terms of, you pay 50% or even 25% in some cases. So it was good financially for us as well. But the players they had gave them good experience. So that's where it stemmed from in terms of Sir Alex. And then we drew them in. We drew them in the
Cup Winners' Cup, wasn't it?
Winners' Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, prior to that, was we played Lyngby. And when the draw was made, Lyngby were playing Bromby 2 weeks before. Bromby and Lyngby are 2 city teams in Copenhagen. It's like Manchester United and Man City. That was the rivalry then. So I went over to Copenhagen to watch the game, obviously to look at Lyngby. That was on a Wednesday, so I flew back Thursday morning, and I got into the office and at Wrexham, they said, Alex Ferguson wants you to ring him, Brian, fairly urgently. So I said, yeah, okay, no problem. So I ring Alex up. He said, all right, how was your trip, Brian? I didn't know he knew that I was in Copenhagen. So how was your trip? I said, it went really well. Lyngby are a good side. I don't think we'll have much chance against them, but we'll do our best. And he said, how did the young Bromby goalkeeper do? I said, oh, he was brilliant, Alex. He was absolutely brilliant. He made some saves. Bromby goalkeeper, go on, Andy, you know it is?
I know it is. Peter Schmeichel.
Yeah, it was. That's how much research Alex did. He knew everything, he obviously had a scout at that game who recognised me. And the scout has made a report, said, if you need a check up with Brian Flynn. I'm assuming he said that. I'm assuming that. So I said, oh yeah, he's definitely. And what happens, we beat Lyngby by a perfect manufactured training ground goal set starting from me. You've seen it, Andy, have you?
It's the Chris Liam, Armstrong one, isn't it?
Have you seen it, Liam?
I haven't seen it, no, but yeah.
Oh, you must have seen it.
It's on all the training exercises.
Chris Armstrong's headed goal.
I can remember it.
You get on YouTube, and what happens next? We draw Manchester United in the next round. What coincidence that is. Yeah, so in terms of relationship with that, it's just built on from them days, basically. Regarding Darren, that's the shortened story on Darren is he was at Wolves. Him and Mark McGee, I think, was the manager. I think it was an open secret that they didn't get on. He wasn't playing him. And Wolves were they were top division then. And we needed somebody just like Darren on loan. So prior to phoning Mark McGee up at Wolves, I phoned Alex up to see if he could mark my card and help in any way, the small way that he could. And he said, I said, I'm going to phone Mark McGee about you were Darren on loan. And he said, forget it, Brian. No, forget it. And I said, why? He said, no, and he's not going to play third division football. He's too good for third division football. Cheers, Alex. Good to be honest. It's good to be honest, Alex. So I said, so I made the phone call. It didn't happen at that time. Darren then got released at the end of the season. Then he went to Holland, went to Feyenoord. He had a season at Feyenoord, I think. He had one season. Came back to the UK in pre-season the following year. I got word that he was training at Wigan, pre-season at Wigan to keep fit and get a contract at Wigan. And then I invited Darren over, and I said, "Come and join us. Come and train with us. See what you like. See if it suits you. I'm building a team around you, Darren. I've got some young players. You don't have to run anywhere, and as soon as you shout, they'll give you the ball. So you'll have loads of the ball. You'll enjoy everything." And he sort of. He weren't 100%, obviously, he weren't 100%. I said, well, what is the problem? I said, length of contract or... the money money is important, Brian, but it's not the be-all and end-all. It's the length of contract. I said to him, you can have 3 years, thinking that's good for him. I think he was 27 then. I said, you can have 3 years. Look, I'd push it to 4 if you want 4. He went, no. I don't want any length. I want an open-ended contract. I said, so you can leave any time. He went, yeah. So he preferred that than a 3-year contract. So I said,
how would he leave, Brian? Would he have like a minimum? Oh, we're before Bosman there, aren't we? So was he technically under contract? And if you had the right bid, you would have to let him go.
It's called a non-contract.
Right, okay.
And the gentleman's agreement that if something that developed for Darren, which it did, then I would, gentleman's agreement, I'd rip it up and he could leave next day. So I said, he said, I'm happy with that, Brian. Yeah, I'll sign for that. So I said, it's an open-ended, it's called a non-contract. And he signed it. The opening game of the season was... we were in the final week of pre-season, so we were playing on the Saturday. On the Thursday, Darren rang me. He said, "Sorry to give you this news, Brian. I've had an offer from Japan, and it's unbelievable. I can't turn it down. I just can't turn it down. Will you rip the contract up? Will you get my international release from the Football Association of Wales?" Which you had to get, international clearance when you play for Wrexham. I'm going to Japan on Sunday to sort the contract out. So I don't really want to play Saturday and travel out Sunday. So Darren's not a problem. Good luck. Good luck. I said. He said, thanks very much, and I hope we meet up again soon. And so that was it. I thought we've lost him. And then Sunday morning he rings me. And he said, can I come back in on Monday? The team that he had signed for had been beaten 5-0 on that Saturday, and they sacked the manager.
Wow.
So the deal was off.
What a sliding doors moment.
Yeah, the deal was off. He said, can I come back training Monday? Have you done the clearance? I said, don't worry about the clearance and the contract. And then after a short period of time, if my memory serves me well, I think it's probably less than 3 months. He came knocking on my door. He said, what about this contract, Brian? Would 2 years be okay? I said, you could have 3 if you want, Dan. I promised you 3. And he said, no, 2 is fine. we're too fine, and we can see where we are in 2 years' time, then renegotiate. So he was confident of staying for a long time then. So that was I don't like managers getting sacked, but I don't mind if they get sacked in Japan. So it allows us to sign down. He was a key figure for us, wasn't he? In the dressing room. He was a key figure in the dressing room as well. I remember saying Wayne Phillips was an absolute Man United nut, fanatical Manchester United fan. I remember saying to pull him to one side when we signed Darren, and he said, if I pulled him on his own, if I brought Wayne into the office, he always thought he'd done something wrong. He must have thought he's done something wrong. And I said, whatever you do, don't ask Darren for tickets. You must not ask Darren for United tickets. If I find that out, I'm going to fine you 2 weeks' wages. You cannot ask Darren to get tickets. And he never did, to be fair to him. Wayne didn't.
He was such a crucial player. Touching on what Sir Alex said, do you think he could have gone on to play at a different level? I think we're all grateful that he didn't go elsewhere, but do you think he could have played at a higher level?
Darren had the brain too. He was clever enough to play at the highest level. His skill set, yes. Sadly lacking pace, which and you'd have to build a team around him. So you'd have to play, which we did. We played in a 4-3-3 formation. So Darren was the middle of three in midfield. We had Wayne and Gareth around him. Both could run all day. Both under my instructions to pass the ball. I mentioned it, to pass the ball to Darren as soon as possible, because he never ever gave the ball away, and he was one of these players. Even though he wasn't quick, he knew exactly where he was on the pitch and where the opponents were. So I think he could have played at the high. I got to be honest. I thought Feyenoord would have suited him. Dutch football. Knowing Dutch football as I do, I thought that type of football would have been suited him down to ground. But thankfully it didn't. And he came back.
Yeah, the rest, as they say, is history, isn't it? We've talked about the Arsenal game quite a lot on this podcast, but just touching on sort of the aftermath of it. Did you have a bigger budget after that game? And did you see it as the turning point that it ultimately became?
Yes, the budget was a lot more. We did once again, it wasn't written in the budget at the start of each season, because you can't predict you're going to reach the third round or the fourth round, and in our case, near the quarterfinals later on. You can't budget at the start of the season to say, right, the gate receipts will be these amounts. The chairman, after a time, did expect us to get to the third round of the FA Cup. So again, there's a gentleman's agreement with the chairman, was that if we got to the third round of the FA Cup and we drew a Premier League team, First Division team, I'd get 50% of the gate receipts. Not me personally. The playing budget would get 50% of the gate. And the chairman said, "That's fine, Brian. That's fine. It's not a problem. We draw a Premier League club home or away. Gate receipts, because gate receipts in the FA Cup are 45% of the home team, 45% of the away team, and 10% of the FA. So that's the breakdown of the gate receipts. So if it's £100,000 gate receipts, we'd receive 45,000. Obviously, my playing budget would be improved by 22,500. That's how it worked. That's how we did it. That's what the plan was.
Sorry, did you want
to? Yeah. So, sorry, right. We do something on this called the fearless moment, and it's the moment that fills you full of most passion in your involvement in Wrexham. I am wondering if it's going to be the Arsenal game, but is there any other moment that sort of stands out for you?
Good question. That's come. I've never had that question. That's really put it at a different angle. No, Scott. I know it's plain and simple, but Arsenal was special. Northampton was even more special.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Northampton, because it was over a season, wasn't it? It was over a season. We proved how good we were. The combination of the players, the team that we had, it was a perfect season for us. And to culminate it with winning at Northampton, and then the celebrations afterwards are memorable. I must admit, they were memorable, the celebrations afterwards. So it was my first promotion as a manager, which is key, absolutely key to what you want to achieve. And it was a really good team. I wonder if you mentioned that team, and we'll speak later about the two teams who would get in.
Yeah.
Paul Mullin might have a chance.
Yeah.
Paul Mullin might have a chance, but Arsenal was everything went to plan, and in terms of coaching, especially when you're coaching young players, you have to give them, it's not restrictions, but you have to give them rules and regulations, I suppose. One of the golden rules for defending, anybody defending, so it might be it's not just defenders, but it might be a midfield player back inside the penalty box, might be a centre forward back to defend set pieces. My golden rule was you can't slip. The reason you slip is not a greasy pitch. It's you're off balance and in the wrong place. You're in the wrong place and off balance. That's the only reasons why you slip. So leading up to the Arsenal game, the week of, when I say everything went to plan, all the major things went to plan. We never predicted Mickey Thomas taking the free kick. Never predicted. I think the best thing that happened in the first half is that they scored late on, and we were still in the game. If they were scored after 6 minutes, it could have been 6-0 first half. Because I think it was 6 minutes left, and it gave me something to work on in the dressing room at half time. And I said something unpredictable will happen. We kept saying that all week. Something you never believe is going to happen. Never believe that Mickey will put the ball into that top corner from that distance. And you never believe that the best defender in Europe at that time, England captain, slips in the penalty box for Steve Watkin to score the winner. So it was written for us that we'd win that game.
Yeah. It's probably the most iconic match I can remember. I mean, I'm hopefully we'll challenge that at some point in the future, but there's nothing close to it at the moment.
It's Ronnie Radford era, isn't it? Hereford, Newcastle.
Yeah.
Two of the circumstances are surrounded. We were 92nd the previous season. They were champions. Hereford were bottom league, weren't they? Newcastle were flying top league. So ours was more dramatic than that, really. But it was the type of goal that Ronnie Radford scored on that pitch, wasn't it? The heavy pitch, to fire it in.
I mean, you must have played with Mickey at Wales level. Was he a free kick taker?
No.
Was he your set play guy?
No, he's never taken a free kick all season. And if you look at the footage now and look at it closely, those people who can lip read can easily tell what Mickey is saying to Wayne. It's very easily, you can see it. He's told him
it's a family show, Brian. Don't say what it is.
He's told him in the nice way. He's told him where to go, because Wayne was there to cross the ball inside the penalty box, not to shoot. It was in that sort of distance in between. It was too close, too far to shoot, and too close to chip it into the box. We'd set something up. He was going to set up a cross to go into the penalty box, and Mickey decided, I'm going to beat England's #1 goalkeeper into the stanchion of the top corner, get the ball within 6 inches. Unbelievable.
can see it now. I can see it every time I close my eyes. Let's go. I'll call this the golden period, right? This is we've got Arsenal out of the way. You've had a little bit more money. You've been able to sort of change things, on this field and off it a little bit. Is there you were famed for your youth system? Is there any particular player that came through that you particularly pleased you due to where you brought them to, or the sort of level they had in the game?
Yeah, the classic one is, and we knew straight away when he came in, it was Brian Hughes.
Right.
Yeah, he had the potential, he had the talent, he had the desire, and he ended up with having a very good career, a very good top level career with some good clubs. Birmingham, obviously, Charlton he went to. He had a good spell at Charlton. We weren't surprised by him. We knew how good he was, but Trevor Francis at Birmingham was desperate to sign him, absolutely desperate to sign him, and I managed to hold him off until we went out to the Cup at Chesterfield. And as soon as that happened, then he was on the phone, because I told Trevor Francis he's going nowhere until the FA Cup is over. Our adventure in the FA Cup is over. And when we lost to Chesterfield, he was the first person on the phone, Trevor, and signed him within a couple of days. And that's how it was. The one who disappointed me most, my thought would do, but was Gareth Owen.
Oh.
I thought Gareth would go on to bigger and better things, but without being tough, he didn't have the desire. He didn't have that inner edge, that real edge you got to have to play at a top level.
Yeah, we had Gareth on. We asked him the same thing. He always looks back at his career. He's fondly. He thinks he really enjoyed what he did. But you think he could have gone on another couple of steps. I mean, he never played for Wales, did he?
No, absolutely. Yeah, he didn't do enough to play for Wales. Yeah, he was. He let others. He had the ability to dominate games or to have a big influence on games, but he never used that ability that he had. I don't think he realised it, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it's probably my fault for not getting the best out of him.
I was going to say, do you think there's anything you would have done differently now to try and harness that a little bit more? But sometimes they're consigned to history. This, isn't it? You can't go back.
No, that's true. Yeah, that's true. But I at that time, for a period, me, Kev, and Joey were confident that Gareth would be the next Sale. Then put it that way. Who's going to be going next? Oh, it'll be Gareth. I think Gareth will be the next one on the move.
The flip side to that is you also brought a lot of good players in. What was your signing who you were particularly pleased with? I mean, I'm thinking I'm going to throw some names at you just because their names are etched into my brain. But Andy Marriott, Brian Carey, Tony Humes, Craig Skinner. I'm joking.
You just named him the best, most influential player I saw was Tony Humes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The most controversial was obviously Gary Bennett.
Yeah. Did you get a lot of stick for that? Did you get a lot of stick for that before he played?
I weren't worried about that, and Gary wasn't worried either, which was one of the reasons why we hit it off. Basically, not we, but Wrexham and Gary hit it off. He was the arch villain, wasn't he?
Pantomime villain, yeah.
Oh yeah, he was a villain in the eyes of Wrexham fans, and he was from Chester. Again, Joey was a major influence on this. Joey was the one who instigated it, who got the meeting together, which he came to the office, and I asked Gary to come to the Isle of Man with us to play in a tournament. And Gary told me in no certain way to forget it. He saw it as a trial period, which in some ways it was. But I said to Gary, I said, come with us. Have 3 games with us, and then at the end of the week we'll sit down and talk contracts. He said, "Well, let's do it now. Let's talk contracts now and sort it out now, rather than go to the Isle of Man." I said, no, I will do it after Eleman. So I was a bit stubborn, which you have to be at certain times. And he just walked out of the room. We went to Eleman, played 3 games, didn't score a goal. And Joey said on our return, he said, give Benno another chance, give Gary another chance, see if he can sort it out with him. We need him, right? We need that type of player. And that's Joey spotted. I took all the plaudits for that. It was Joey who did everything in terms of wanting him and being strong and pushing me to take him, took him in, told him we'd seen him play obviously a lot locally with Chester, and he was playing off wide areas. I said, Benno, you're a penalty box player, centre forward. He said, I've never played centre forward. You're a centre forward now. And like it or lump it, that's how it is. And 130 goals in 3 seasons.
Nuts.
Sign him on a free transfer and then sell him for 300 grand, over 300 to Tranmere when he's 32. So he was the most controversial, but the most influential and best was Tony Humes by a long, long way, because he was the captain on the pitch. He guided everything, and he was a perfect leader, perfect player at the perfect time for us.
Yeah, it's a shame he had suffered with injuries a little bit, didn't he? Because you would sort of think that he was at least a division, championship as you would call it now, player, maybe a bit higher if he was able to. Yeah. I want to talk about some other signings you made. Where the hell did you get 3 Trinidadians from? Well, obviously Trinidad. I'm going to say obviously Trinidad.
Caribbean. The Caribbean.
How did that come about? That's another Joey link, isn't it?
It's another Joey, isn't it? It's all to do with Joey. Joey's cousin, his name is Mike Berry. He's from Liverpool. And I think at that time, Mike was then becoming an agent, a football agent. He was about to register as a football agent. And I'm not 100% certain. I can't remember 100% certain why he chose to go to the Caribbean. Mike will have the answer. It's not a British colony, is it? To Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, it might have been.
Is it a British colony?
Liam, get on Google. I can't recall.
We didn't need work.
I played cricket a lot, but you know.
Yeah.
Lara's from there.
I went to the first 2 was Carlos and Hector.
Mm.
They came on trial.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Do you have a keeper as well, Clayton Ince?
Clayton Ince, yeah, absolutely good memory, Andy. Yeah, Clayton was about 6'7". Clayton was a big lad, but at that time, I didn't think we needed a goalkeeper. It wasn't number 1 on the priority list. But with Carlos and Hector, instantly we said these are good enough. Took us the time to get a work permit, and then after that, Dennis came into. Mike Berry then said, "Look, do you want to have a look at a centre half, 6'8" centre half, Trinidad international?" Showed me some videos of it, and I liked. And he actually came across and was on trial at Bolton. Mike had got him into Bolton. He had some contacts at Bolton, so I went to the Reebok Stadium to watch Mike play for Bolton reserves, and Dennis. And I said, I'll sign him now. I saw him play. I said, look, I'll sign him today. Get him out of Bolton as soon as you can, Mike, and let's talk contracts. So, and that's what we did. That's how we did it.
Yeah, all the Trinidadians didn't really hit the ground running straight away, did they? I mean, Dennis had a bit of a tough time. Carlos didn't really find his feet for a while, and Hector was brilliant, but in patches.
In flashes, yeah.
Yeah. I think probably the manager after you probably had the best out of these guys, but you know, to bring them over in the first place was a little.
It was a gem. Yeah, they were all gems in their own different way. Hector was so laid back; it's untrue. Hector was. He was he was a flash in the pan. You know, he was brilliant and then shocking within 5 minutes of each other. I don't think he was cut out to be a professional footballer. And the demands and the sacrifices that you must give to be a professional footballer. Carlos was completely the opposite. I'm going to be a top professional. I'm going to get the top. I'm going to play professional football in England. And in many ways, Dennis was the same as well. So their mental attitude and approach was a lot stronger than Hector's. I think Hector just wanted to get back to the Caribbean, to the sun and the beach. I think that's what they wanted deep down, and that's what eventually happened. But Dennis and Carlos made good careers for themselves, and Dennis is doing really well now with Coventry, assistant manager at Coventry. So he's had a really good time over here, and it was right place, right time. That happens a lot in football, and they were really interesting. Still speak to him now. Spoke with Dennis last week before the Wembley game. Wish him well. So speaking of Carlos. Carlos is back down in Suffolk, I think. He lives down in Suffolk way. Carlos does.
Yeah, after Ipswich. I've got a lot of respect for both of them, but especially Dennis, I think, because Dennis had a tough start to his career, but he absolutely, he rose to the challenge, and I think that's a measure of a man that stands so tall. Do you remember their nickname? Collective nickname.
The Flynnadadians.
The Flynnadadians, that's it. Yeah, I wonder if that's another Dave Lovett. It must be.
Flynnadadians, yeah, just caught me there, Andy. It was.
Well,
it was. I remember trying to get the work permit, and the solicitor. Well, I didn't know what to do. I said, I'm going to have to get an expert. So I phoned Alex Ferguson again. I phoned Alex up. I said, look, Alex, I'm trying to sign these two players from Trinidad. There's a story there as well as another one. I'll tell you about Dwight York.
Yeah.
Just remind me about Dwight York. And I said, I don't know what to do next. I need to get a work permit for these two. It was Carlos and Hector. It was. He said, ring Maurice Watkin, Brian, solicitors. He's a director at Manchester United. He's solicitors in Manchester. Ring him up. He's put in. I'll ring him first to tell him to expect your call and what it's about. So I ring Maurice Watkin. Half an hour later, he takes the call straight away. Say, right by, I've got a young solicitor here who is absolutely brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant at getting with what you want. He's an expert and he'll get this through. And I met up with him, give him all the information. He asked 1,000 questions, which obviously for a reason. And he's now, I've got to be honest, Andrew, if Liam can Google this while we're here, he's now chief executive of Watford Football Club.
Wow, that's a poison chalice.
Chief executive, Watford Football Club. He was a solicitor.
Is it Scott's Dewberry?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Scott Dewberry. Chief executive, Liam, is that what it says?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, CEO Scott Dewberry. Yeah,
he was the one who got us the work permits. He was a young up and coming solicitor, worked for Maurice Watkins' firm, and he was absolutely brilliant. And I remember the person who was dealing with it at the time, who's now quite prominent in government, I think, called Margaret Hodge.
Oh, I've heard of her, yeah.
So she's quite prominent. I think she was working for the Home Office, and she dealt with work permits. I'm sure it was Margaret Hodge.
Labour MP for Barking.
Labour MP for Barking.
Yeah.
Scott Duxbury, not Dewberry. Scott Duxbury. That's just come to me, Liam. He went down the road, little old Wrexham Road. Why can't little old Wrexham have players from Trinidad?
Yeah.
They fitted the criteria. They played international football. They're paying them the best rate that Wrexham are paying them. So they met the criteria. And he got it through brilliantly. Scott Duxbury, that's what it was, not Dewberry, Duxbury.
Go on, tell us about Dwight York.
Dwight York. Both of them got called up to play for Trinidad. So that meant they would leave they were playing Wednesday. That's right. So they'd leave Sunday morning for Trinidad, and then fly back on the. They could get a flight back on the Wednesday night after the game. If the game was a 3:00 kickoff on Wednesday, which it was, they could get a direct flight back to Manchester, which would be about 7:00 from Trinidad. There was a problem getting from the ground to the airport in time. To get the plane in time, because finish at 5:00.
Yeah.
Debrief with the manager, shower, change. That's 6:00. You won't get to the airport through the traffic. Check in time. Check in is 6:30 or whatever it is. So you'd miss the flight on the Wednesday. That means you're flying Thursday, taking all day to fly back to think. You come into training on Friday. You're not in the best shape to play Saturday. Yeah. That was the thing. But I found out, after speaking with Alex, Dwight York, United had put a helicopter on it outside to take him from the match, 5:15, helicopter, flight to the airport, into the airport at 6:15 by chopper, probably less time than that. In the 6:15, 7:00 flight, back in Manchester that night. In his own bed, back in Wrexham, in his own mind. It might be 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, but it was still you're back in, Thursday morning. Carlos and Hector didn't arrive for training, didn't appear. They've obviously missed the flight. For whatever reason, they've missed the flight from Trinidad. So they come in Friday morning. Carlos cannot tell lies. He cannot tell lies. It's just not in his makeup to tell a lie. You could tell, when you get to know him, you just couldn't tell a lie. Hector could. Hector could lie all day and you'd believe him. But Carlos couldn't tell a lie. So we got them together. I said, well, what happened? He said, we missed the flight. I said, I know you missed the flight. How did you miss the flight? He said, no, the traffic, right? There's no traffic in the air with the helicopter. Do you get the helicopter? I went, yeah. So what happened? I prefer not to say, Brian. So I left it at that. I said, okay. I left it at that. So next day, Carlos knocks on my door, comes and said, I need to tell you, Brian. This is how honest he was. I weren't going to push him. He said, will you not tell Alex? I said, what do you mean? He said, don't tell Alex what happened. I said, I can't promise I won't, but I know what you're saying. I said, well, tell me what happened. So the two of them, Carlos and Hector, jump in the helicopter with Dwight. And they're just rising, just hovering above the ground. And Dwight says to the pilot, head straight for Tobago, because he lives on Tobago. He's got a mansion on Tobago, which is next. It's like Anglesey in North Wales. Literally, but not as close as that. But it's the island, Trinidad and Tobago, isn't it?
Yeah.
Take me home to Tobago. And the pilot said, no, I'm going to take you to the airport. And Dwight said, no, Tobago. So they went to Tobago and stayed with him in his mansion. I think they must have had a party for certain. I think they might. So he said, I can't promise I'm not telling Alex. And not long after Alex rang me up, he said, sorry, Brian, about what happened. He apologised. He was letting my lads fly with free of charge.
Yeah.
He said, sorry about what happened, Brian. I said, well, he said, you know what happened, don't you? Dwight said detour to Tobago. He knew. Alex knew what Dwight was like. He knew that Dwight was, first time.
One.
So that's what happened with with Dwight York and the internationals.
Oh, you can't get the staff now. You can't even get a lift. Right, another player I want to mention. I just want to make sure in my mind it was definitely under your spell and not Dennis's spell. Spell. Do you remember a player called Imad Bouanane?
Yeah, me.
Is it you?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what the hell was happening there? Because it was from the sublime to the ridiculous, often in the same run. He was nuts, wasn't he?
There was a young French agent called Gregory, and he was based in London. And Kev, because Kev was £1 million player, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He signed so he had an agent. Kev had an agent. No, he wasn't working for him when he was. He was only working for him when he was a player. Anyway, this Kev's agent said to Kev, we've got a young player. He's a bit different. Will you have a look at him? We said yes. There's no problem. If it's a recommendation, we've got. In fact, we had do we have a pre-season game against Manchester United? I think we did.
Yeah.
He played in what? I think he played in that game. Brought him in and played. He was sensational. 6'2", left-footed, quick, left back. I thought it's just what we needed. Imad Bouanane.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we signed him, and he wasn't. It was a flash again. The flash in the pan, really. Yeah, but that was me. I don't know if Dennis got the legacy of that. Possibly.
No, I don't think he was about for a while, Imad. I don't. I mean, he's seared on all our minds, but I reckon he probably only played about 11 games.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
You know, everyone remembers him. He used to take the ball. He used to fly up the wing, hit the post. He always hit the post. He never scored. Always hit the post, and then leave a big hole at the back, which he would sort of like wander into after about 10 minutes.
That's Imad. Yeah, no doubt about that.
How are you doing for time, Brian?
What time is it?
It's 10:40.
Top of the hell, we going hour and 40.
I know. Should we aim to get this wrapped up in the next 20 minutes?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, right. I'm going to go through things a little bit. My last question before I hand back to Liam: who do you blame for Chesterfield? There's two culprits, two sort of people.
Goalkeeper bottled it.
Yeah.
Goalkeeper absolutely bottled it.
Oh, right.
And poor Darren took the bulk of the harsh criticism. He should have easily controlled that situation. He bottled it. I have no doubt.
I wasn't expecting you to be so forthright, but there you go.
Well, you asked me the question.
No.
Look, Darren was a little. He was dynamite, Darren, and he was like tough and he was a farmer, brought up on a farm. You know, West Wales, down from West Wales, and he was tough as anything, not afraid to do anything. He would never have bottled it, Darren. No. He knew that ball was his, but it was Andy's. The ball was Andy's. He should have totally controlled the situation.
Fair enough. Yeah, I asked the question. You did not sugarcoat the answer. Liam, over to you.
So just coming towards the end of your time now at Wrexham, can you put a finger on what went wrong towards the end, and were there any sort of hard feelings from your perspective?
No, none whatsoever. Absolutely none. It was the story behind it. The real story behind it is that the previous season we finished 7th. 6th or 7th, close, challenging for playoffs. Challenging, which was probably our second or third time up in that position in the division. I just felt we needed. I asked the chairman. I went for a meeting with the chairman privately and just said, "Look, is there any way possible that we can invest £500,000 into the team? We'll get promotion. That money will come back 10 times, we get promotion. And the players we're looking at and what we're going to do, is there any possibility where you can raise £500,000, knowing obviously that would have to come from the board and have to come as guarantees. And chairman said, I'll put it to the board and we'll have a show of hands. Went to the board meeting, and the show of hands were 6 board members kept their hands down, and chairman put his hands up on his own. So in effect, the money was not there. So I had 1 year left on my contract. I then said that I'm not going to renew my contract. This was after 12 years, by the way. It's going to be 12 years. I don't intend to renew my contract. I said I want a break from football management. I just wanted to do something different, but that was just an excuse, I would say. So I'd sort of hinted that I was going to be leaving anyway at the end of the season. But I stress I didn't want to make that public. But when the results started going, was it 5 at Tranmere? We lost 5 at Tranmere.
Yeah.
We call it a day. At that time, prior to that, sorry, I missed. Prior to that, chairman hadn't been well, I must admit. He was going through a bit of ill health. So he wasn't in total control at that time. I can honestly say that. So when they pulled the trigger, I'm not sure the chairman would have agreed with it, but he let it happen, which is fine. It's as I said, I've been sacked by Limerick for doing everything correctly. I'd had 12. Look, you can't complain. It was a great period for me. It was a great first club to manage, I must admit. So you could say I sort of instigated the departure. That's why it wasn't. That's why it was so amicable.
Yeah, and could you just remind me, had the takeover happened when you left, or was that afterwards?
Afterwards.
Yeah.
After I left, yeah.
So you didn't get to have any dealings with the infamous Mr. Hamilton and co there?
None whatsoever. No, none
Probably for the best.
I hear the stories are whether they're infamous. The stories, aren't they?
Yeah.
They all turn out to be correct. You know, there was there's been some disasters, isn't it, in terms of owners at Wrexham? Absolutely disaster. Yeah. Which is complete another story.
Yeah. Did you think there was any chance at all that you could turn things around by the end, or were you finished? Had you made up your mind in terms of your departure?
Oh no! When David Rose, it was David Rose who came to me and said, "Brian, the board would like me to say, shall we call it a day? Is it time to?" I think it was November, wasn't it?
Yeah, just after Tranmere, I think.
Yeah, we were heavily beaten, and I discussed it with Joey and Kev, obviously, and said, "Look, this is our final season." But knowing football, anything could happen. It could be. Yeah. It could come soon. We could go through the end of the season. We could change our minds and accept a contract. We were that open. You know, it was all open like that. You could stay. The team was not improving at that time. We didn't have I don't think we had the production line of young players coming through as good as at that time. So the next 2 or 3 years would have been tough, as they turned out. So we left, and it was fine. We shook hands and just got on with it, and everything was done amicably.
Yeah, you were obviously heavily involved in the youth system during your time as Wrexham. I think it was one of the lowest placed clubs to have an academy. What's your view of how that went?
Well, it was an obsession to have an academy. You got to have a training ground, you know. And the Colliers Park was an obsession for me, for Kev, for Joey, to get our own facility. I remember the first time, our first academy game was Tottenham Hotspur at home, And I remember them turning up and thinking they're going to play down at the Groves, 4 acres at the Groves, thinking they'd be playing on a park like that. And they came to the Colliers Park and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe the facilities that we had. And we gave them a good game, if I remember, as well. I think it was a good game, so we watched most of the game. So it was important for the development of. I remember Howard Wilkinson. Howard Wilkinson's dream was the academy football, was elite football, obviously, but it was only meant for the top 6 clubs in the Premier League. That all they would get all the best players, which would nurture them for England. It was a plan to get elite players for England. Excuse me. So when we applied, Howard Wilkinson phoned me up because he was technical director of the FA. He said, "Brian, do you realise this is all for England? You were Welsh. You were a Welsh club. You're a Welsh club. Well, we're not really doing it to help Welsh football. We're doing it to help for English football." I said, "Howard, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but do you know how far from the border Wrexham is? And if I look at statistics now, I'll check on them, but we have 60 players in our academy system, ranging from 10-year-old up to 16-year-old. 70% of them were born in England, Chester, Liverpool. A lot of them from Liverpool, Manchester. They were coming from all over. They weren't all Welsh. So as soon as he said, right, okay, but I'll pass it, and that's why we got the license. One of the major things why we got the license.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Quite blunt though, his call to you.
Yeah.
So just fast forwarding now quite some years to quite recently, when you came back in 2019 with Brian Hughes. Did you jump at that chance to come back to Wrexham, or did you have to be talked into it a little?
I know Brian had talked me into it. Yeah, but under certain conditions, strict certain conditions. He said, "Look, he rang me. He said, Brian, I want you to come in and help me." I said, "Yeah, not a problem, Brian." Initially, I said, "Yes, good." I said, "We need to speak face to face." So I said, "Where are you now?" He said, "I'm in Wrexham." I said, I didn't realise he lived in Hull. So Brian lived in Hull, just outside Hull. So he said, I'm coming home tonight. I said, "I'll meet you on junction 27, the M62, the Holiday Inn," which is halfway up for him, and it's not far from me. It's 40 minutes from. I'll meet you at the hotel at 6 o'clock tonight. We'll have a sit down and have a chat. So we met up. I said, "Right, these are the rules. I'll come in twice a week, plus matches. I'll no part in training, coaching. That's your job. Or everything on the grass is your job, Brian. I'm not taking a warm up. I'm not taking anything, because that's your job. But what I'll do, I'll say, I'll point you in the right direction, yes or no, good or bad. I'll answer any questions you got, and we can make it work. We can make it work." There were other influencing factors that I was deeply concerned about. I can't go into them, obviously, but I was deeply concerned about going in. Like I'd mentioned earlier on, do you go back? The old adage, never go back. It was really interesting. I must admit, Brian had the potential to be a good manager. He definitely had the potential. He had the right ideas, and he went about, and he had good management skills. So it's a shame that he'll probably never be a manager again. Will he? I mean, sacked by a conference club. Excuse me. So I felt I wasn't. I wasn't surprised, I suppose, knowing what I know now and finding out what happened behind the scenes and finding out what went on. But it's a shame that he's not still in the game now as a coach or a manager.
Yeah, it's a shame we can't push you on that, but I understand why you don't want to go on the record on that. And it's water under the bridge now. Let's throw it forward. Let's have a look at the future. What's going on now? Could Brian Flynn be in a documentary? Could you deal with all that media pressure?
Yes, I'm sure it's exciting at the time. Having witnessed it recently when I went down to the training ground. With everything that's happened, it's become the norm down there, isn't it? I mean, even the players don't blink twice now about cameras being poked in their face. So it's become normal and natural. And to be honest, when things with Wrexham, in the early days, the media attention with BBC Wales, for example, when the cup runs would come in and they'd be everywhere in the car park, and players get used to that. They quite like that attention, don't they? So it's going to be interesting. Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4 is going to be Part 5. Obviously, the plan is Premier League.
Yeah,
that's obvious,
I'm here for season 5.
Yeah, it's obvious. It's 5. Well, Luton's done it in 10, haven't they? In 9. Wrexham could half that. They could do it in 5.
Oh wow!
In Premier League, God, there's no doubt about that. Why not? What is there to stop them? There's no barriers now to stop them whatsoever.
What do they need to do to take them to that next level? And one thing I was going to ask you about is the youth system isn't what it used to be. Is that something that they really need to crank up again?
They need to. Oh yeah, without a doubt, it's too late now.
Is it?
It's never too late. I'll rephrase that. They'll have to, if they want to be in the Premier League. Yes. So 5 years' time, set out a development plan for 5 years. Yes, they do need it, and they do need a strong one. Max Cleworth was the only one that's come through in the last how many years?
I can sort of understand it, Brian, because it's such an imperative to get out the non-league. People like Phil Parkinson need to buy proven players to get them out there. But I do sort of think that you can't go out and buy all your players, can you? Every now, you need to supplement your squad with people coming through. And the catchment area is huge, you know that.
Yeah, it's without a doubt. And the key message as well is if you're developing young players, the average age of your squad comes down dramatically, which is important.
Yeah.
It's important. As a coach, realise that when you're planning things for 2 or 3 years down the line. How old is Paul Mullen? I'm not sure.
27, 28, maybe.
Yeah, so his next 2 years are going to be golden period. 3 years. 3 years is going to be golden period for him, isn't it? 30, championship, 30-year-old in the championship. Defenders as good and as clever as him. But if you've got a young Steve Watkin coming through,
takes
it's
the pressure off.
Oh yeah, it takes the pressure off and puts the pressure on players. I'm not saying that it's a scenario that we're talking about, but I think they do need to reinvest into. Apparently, I'm led to believe it's not priority. In fact, there's nothing wrong with it. I think with the ladies' team doing so well, that's probably number 2 priority, isn't it? If the first team's number 1, number 2 is the ladies, which is great, which is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. But that's the list of priorities is Premier League for the first team.
Yeah. I just want to quickly talk about Mullin and Wales. We've just seen the Wales squad. He's not in it. How would Brian Flynn connect the dots to get Paul Mullin in that Wales squad? And do you think that ship has sailed a little bit, or do you think there is a place for him to at least test him at that level?
Having been involved, I would take Paul Mullin to the Welsh hotel with his boots and say to the manager, whoever the manager would be, not talking about Rob Page now. I'm talking hypothetical.
Yeah.
I would drive in down to the Vale in Cardiff and say to the manager, he's training with you for the next 2 days, 3 days. Just let him train with you, and then he'll be in the squad. Have a look at him close hand.
You think he's good enough?
Yeah. Goal scorers, every level. Doesn't matter what level. Our one is Andy Morrell, isn't it? Andy Morrell scored goals for fun for his non-league team, and did the same with us, didn't he?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what level. If you're a goal scorer, you've got a natural instinct, then that's it. But is it through his parents or grandparents being?
Grandparents, I think, Liam. Am I right there?
Yeah, pretty sure it's his grandmother, I think.
His grandmother, yeah. So basically, I'm not saying Phil has to dictate the situation, but I'd really force the issue. I'd take a personal. Yeah, I'd do it and get personal with the manager and push it.
Right, Brian. I realise we're running out of time here. What I want to do is I want to do some quick fire questions, and then I've got one last question, and then we're done. Right, the quick fire questions are: out of all your time in Wrexham, who is the most skillful?
Carl Connolly.
Oh, love that answer. Who was the worst dressed?
Gary Bennett.
Oh, I'm having that one as well. Who was the most underrated?
Steve Watkin.
Oh, yeah. All great answers so far. Who's the biggest moaner?
Gary Bennett.
Oh, okay. It's always this. We should really say who out of the Darren Ferguson or Neil Ashton moaning award is the biggest moaner. But yeah, Bennett was a good one as well. Right. Finally, who would you least like to fight?
Joey.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Right. Finally, this is the last question. This is a true or false. This is Brian Flynn's best team at Wrexham. I'm going to name 11 players who I think it is. And you tell me if you would slide someone else in there. Marriott, McGregor, Carey, Humes, Hardy, Fergie, Yoza, Rooster, Carl, Steve Watkin, and Bennett.
That's perfect.
Brilliant.
Oh.
Wow. Liam, have you got it? Yeah.
The only it'd be a strong subs bench.
Oh, it would be a brilliant subs bench.
Yeah, it'd be a strong subs bench. As you're probably aware by my earlier answer, I'm not too sure about Marriott in goal.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. I mean, he was a brilliant shot stopper, wasn't he?
I'm not too sure. Well, in relation to your previous question regarding Mullen, I did that with Andy Marriott. I got him a Welsh cap.
By driving him down there?
Yeah, I got him a Welsh cap. He played once for Wales, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Yeah, he played once for Wales. So I was manager, and I forced the issue with... It'd be Mark Hughes, I think. Would it be Mark Hughes? It must have been Mark Hughes. Liam, do some digging there on. Liam,
when
do
was
some
Google. Could it have been Bobby Gould?
No, you've hit the nail on the head, Andrew. Yeah. I would have talked to Bobby Gould and said, look, I'll drive him down. And they didn't do any research in them days about where your parents or grandparents were from. So it would have been Bobby Gould, yeah. I'm not too sure about Andy Marriott, but in his place, I don't know. Mark Morris was a good young goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Mark Cartwright, no. Don't think Mark could compete with that one.
No.
Who else was in goals? Vince O'Keefe when I arrived. Yeah.
Dearden was good for a season.
Who?
Kevin Dearden.
Kev, yeah, one season, Kev, yeah, fatty. He was too fat when he Kev. He had a problem. He had a weight problem, Kev.
I remember Joey trying to take some biscuits off him in the in Collier's Park. It was pandemonium there, mate. Right, very last question: would anyone from the current squad get into that team?
I've got to be brutally honest. I've seen Wrexham play this season twice, live, and only in recent weeks. Paul Mullen's a certainty.
Yeah?
Yeah, he'd be a certainty to be on the bench.
On the bench.
He'd be a certainty to... No. He'd have a strong case to start. The other player I liked because of his creativity was Ollie Lee.
Elliot Lee, yeah.
Elliot Lee, sorry, not Ollie. Elliot Lee, I love his creativity. He's a bit different. He's a little bit unexpected, which you need in every team. And more importantly, he pops up and gets goals as well. So I think them two would get me thinking long and hard.
Brian, I've absolutely loved this chat.
Ben
Thank you.
Ben Foster for Marriott.
Oh, okay. You can have that one.
Yeah, there we go.
You have that one. Brian, absolutely loved this. Thank you so much. We've had you on for an hour and a half. It felt like 20 minutes. There's so much more we could have asked you.
I'll try again. Yeah, we can come on anytime, Andy.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Right, I'm going to stop the recording.